Welcome, everyone, to the July 11th meeting of the City Council. This is a work session, and this work session is on the continuing discussion of our City Hall. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll just turn it over to Christy and her team to get us started.
Mayor Piercy, councilors, good evening. We're happy to be back tonight to talk about...
Do your best to do the lean-in thing.
The lean-in thing? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is this good? My name is Christy Hammond. I'm the Central Services Director. I'm joined tonight at the table by my colleague, Kurt Corey, Public Works Director. Kurt and I are both representatives from the executive team on the City Hall Policy Group, and are here tonight to share the results of the bid process with you. We're also here tonight is Mike Penwell, who is the project manager. You're very familiar with Mike, and Mike will be available to answer any technical questions that you may have. Unfortunately, the news that we have to share tonight isn't as favorable as we had hoped for when we spoke with you last in April. What we've learned recently is that the costs for the construction of City Hall are $3 million higher than anticipated at that time. Tonight, what we plan to do is go over a little bit about the process that we embarked upon in trying to create a competitive bid environment, and then also what factors that we think contributed to the costs being higher than anticipated at that time. And in addition to that, we'll provide you with 3 options for your consideration in thinking about how we move forward. So following the council work session in April, the design team, contractor, and staff worked swiftly to complete the construction documents in preparation for a June bid process. Staff worked with McKinsey Commercial to develop an extensive outreach plan and an effort to help provide the contractors an opportunity to bid on what we felt was a very, very strong project with, the legacy aspect to it, as well as the forward-leaning and thinking about a 50 to 100-year building. McKinsey Commercial wanted to create the most competitive and open bidding process possible. So one of the things that they did is took steps to reduce or to take the different components of the construction project and put that into multiple bid packages. So as a result, we had 27 bid packages that were available for contractors to bid on. The city, we followed our normal process around outreach. We used our e-bid system to make the process information, or the bid process information, available. We also reached out and published in multiple journals information about the project. And in addition, we took some extensive outreach to MWDBEs to help make information available to those who might not be as familiar with the project. City staff in the purchasing department made over 60 emails and phone calls to vendors to try to inform them about the project and to build a level of excitement for the bid process itself. On May 24th, McKinsey Commercial opened up the process by hosting an open house on the site. The staff in McKinsey Commercial were encouraged by the high level of participation at that event, and we're looking forward to the completion of the bid process. Overall, a great deal of effort was made by McKinsey Commercial and staff to generate a high level of interest in the project and to create a competitive bidding environment. The solicitation closed and the bids were publicly opened on June 28th. Unfortunately, even after the expansive effort to encourage contractors to bid on the project, the number of bids received for the project was very minimal. McKinsey Commercial, after the bid process closed, launched into their process of looking at the bids and reviewing them for conformance to the requirements of the bids, and engaged in some pretty extensive work. What they found is that many of the bids that were submitted were incomplete, which required extra effort by McKinsey Commercial to complete that process. So, for example, some of the apparent low bidders excluded parts of work in their bid, which, after detailed evaluation, resulted in a cost increase for those bid packages in order to address the gaps in the information that was provided. As a result, McKinsey Commercial's guaranteed maximum price came in higher to account for the increased risk associated with the uncertainty of the incomplete bids and the estimates to fill those gaps. Although we have maintained an optimistic viewpoint that the bids would be competitive, it is apparent that the local contractors and vendors are extremely busy and the bidding environment is not as favorable at this time as we had anticipated. On Friday, McKinsey Commercial provided us with their guaranteed maximum price, their GMP or their offer, of $18.2 million for the construction of the City Hall building. As mentioned earlier, that is $3 million over the estimated construction budget information provided by McKinsey Commercial and RBA in April. I also wanted to take a minute to point out that when we spoke with you in April, the information that we were using as our estimate was based on two very sound estimates. One was done by McKinsey Commercial, and the other end was validated by ACC Cost Consultants, which is an independent construction cost estimating firm. And at that time, we were feeling like we were in a good position to move forward. Over the course of the last few weeks after receiving the bids, McKinsey Commercial has been identifying value engineering strategies that could be pursued to help reduce the cost of the project. Some of these ideas include consideration of light fixtures, changes to some of the cement in the plaza, and concrete designs and things like that. But quite frankly, it will not be enough to fill the $3 million increase. While the bidding market is always difficult to predict, we believe that some of the key drivers that have led to the higher bids are related to a saturated market where contractors are quite frankly busy with construction projects. And while that's good for the economy, it was challenging for the bidding on our project. Even with extensive outreach, McKinsey Commercial struggled to get responses from subcontractors due to the busy environment that they are in right now. And many bid packages of the 27 that I was referring to, some of them only received one bid. This appears to be an emerging theme for the 2016 construction season. We also recently learned that other large projects in the Portland area received no bids at all for some of their projects, and School District 4J also received fewer bids than anticipated on some of their projects as well. So I think it's just it's a change in the economy and the need for contractors to be very busy, which is good. This is unusual. We also learned that due to inflation, construction costs are increasing at a rapid rate. And we also feel that there are several elements, as you know, that our forward-leaning, forward-thinking City Hall project is a little bit complex. Some of the parts of it are a little bit complex, and what we think that may have also contributed to the higher bids is that the contractors who are busy already probably didn't have as much time as maybe they would have liked to really thoroughly evaluate some of these complexities that are in the project, and as a result maybe built in a little bit more contingency to address the risk. It's just an assumption at this point, but perhaps one of the factors that contributed. So I would say even after taking significant measures to achieve the best possible outcomes, the market environment has just not proved to be favorable for City Hall bidding at this time. Therefore, today, we have three potential options for your consideration and direction. And they are in the small print up there. The first option is to accept the guaranteed maximum price of $18.2 million and proceed with scheduling a public hearing and action on a supplemental budget on July 25th. Option number 2 is to rebid the project in 6 to 9 months when the bidding environment might produce more competitive bids. Prior to rebidding, Council could review their project values and design of the project in meeting those values. Option 3 is to postpone direction until after Council meets with the County Board of Commissioners in a joint work session on July 14th. The Council could hold a work session on July 18th either before or at its 7:30 meeting, during which Council could choose one of the following above options or a different one. If Council chooses this option, then unless Council directs otherwise, our intention would be to provide notice for a public hearing on July 25th on a supplemental budget in order to preserve the Council's option of accepting the GMP following the joint meeting. Again, I wish that we had better news to share about the bids tonight, but at this point I think we'll turn it over to Mayor Piercy and to all of you to ask questions or let us know what else we can provide. Thank you.
I have a couple comments to make, and then I've got in the queue George Brown, George Bowling. Yes. Okay, so my comments go as thus. Building a new city hall is not a new discussion. In fact, councils have been voting to build a new one for over 20 years. Based on those votes and that intention, the old city hall was kept functioning. It was extremely run down. Over the last decade or so, council has had two major rounds of planning a new city hall. The first was ambitious and grand. The second is more modest and to be phased in. All council votes have been to build on the site of the city property. The ground is prepared, but the progress has been slow. Council made a decision during the recession to build a first phase city hall. This was in response to budget constraints. If we had built then, the cost would have been considerably less because all construction costs were less. Now council is faced with escalating costs. It appears the longer the discussion goes on, the higher the costs grow. The importance of a city hall for our city remains. It is the face of our city for those who live here and to those who come from afar. City Hall is a place of the people, not simply for routine work, but for the community to come to talk to those they elect to lead. And they come by the hundreds to discuss land use, literacy, infrastructure, housing, labor practices, development, climate change, civil and human rights. In this way, the City Hall is the heart of the city itself. City Hall is the place where the policies and laws of our city are made. It is a place where we actually come together as a community. After all these years, it is time for this council to act on prior decisions. In our downtown, long-term pits and empty storefronts convinced many that we would be a city without a downtown. It took 40 years for that to change. And now the community is full of optimism about our downtown future. The longer the city property sits empty, the more many will lose sight of the value of a city hall, the place of the people. We face rising costs, we face criticism and indifference, we face emerging alternate proposals, and can easily see decades rolling out ahead of us where the site becomes the new pit. Our responsibility is always to be fiscally wise and to work with others. It is also to fulfill this decade-old promise to provide a new city hall for Eugene as a place we come together as a community to ensure a good life now and for generations to come. Given that council accomplishes that, it too should fill us with civic pride and optimism for the future. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. The project has gotten out of control. It's time to hit the pause button, seriously. I believe that we should do some modification of option number 2, but I don't like the way option number 2 is written because that just assumes that we're going to go ahead and do this after, say, 9 months until the bidding environment gets better. I think that is a good reason to pause because, you know, $2 million, another escalation after the $7 million one that we learned about in April. Now it's almost 100% of the $15 million original budget. And it will be 100% or exceed 100% before it's all over. I think we understand that because these figures that we've been presented with do not include change orders, which will happen once the construction starts. And so they happen with every project, by the way, not unique to this. That will bump it up even more. And then pretty soon we're at 30 million. And it's really time to just take a serious time out here. I hope most of you have seen this one possible option of moving ahead but it involves working with the county. And, you know, working with the county and being patient. We have to be patient. When they figure out what they're going to do with their courthouse, and it will take time for them to finance that. We could do a land swap. We could move into the, still go ahead and build this on the butterfly lot. Well, maybe chop it down to 3 stories. Why do we need an empty 4th floor? If we take the empty 4th floor off, that saves $2.8 million right there. That trims it back down. And then I've heard that it's going to cost about $9 million to remodel the county courthouse. It would be unacceptable as is for the rest of the city hall offices that we would try to consolidate. However, it's a steel-framed building. Interior walls can be taken out safely and very easily, and it can be completely remodeled for around $9 million. So I think we need to take a serious time out, not till after the meeting later this week with the county. I mean, I think we ought to pause for a year and hold end-up discussions with the county and try to work out a really sensible, land swap and money payment and work through all that stuff. And it may take more than a year, and they eventually, see, things work pretty well right now, actually, I think. I'll need another round, Mayor. Put me in round 2, please.
George Foley?
Thank you. And without getting into too much detail, what is the current cost per square foot of the project now?
George, can you speak right into your mic? I can't hear you.
Okay.
Counselor, it's just a little bit under $600 a square foot.
I'm sorry, say again?
Just a little bit below $600 a square foot.
And how does that compare to similar city hall projects that we know of, or county or governmental facilities?
You may remember that slide that I presented it in one of the April meetings that had some comparisons. They range from the mid 400s per square foot up to $800 to $900 a square foot. There's some different factors with each of those, but at this rate, it's starting to move up into the middle of that range now.
And then, don't go away, Mike. Realizing that there's a difference between a city hall and a standard office building or medical building, what is, or do you know what the approximately what the cost is per square foot to building a standard office building or medical building?
No, I don't. I don't deal in that kind of construction, so I don't really know.
Okay, I just thought maybe you might have that information. I appreciate the mayor's comments and also George's comments. The option 3 is what I'm looking at primarily at this point, with perhaps bringing part of option 2 down, which would be for the council to review their project values and design of the project and in meeting those values. I think that's a very important part. Since coming on the council in 2003, I've advocated that the city and the county work together to try to consolidate our efforts and our services to try and save money on both jurisdictions, as well as delivering better product to the community. We've made some strides in that area, but I don't think we've made enough. And in the initial discussions around 2003, 5, wherever it was, when we first talked about the $125 million Taj Mahal, I made a recommendation that perhaps we work with the county and see if we can combine the city and the county governments into one building. It's done in other cities across the nation, where the county seat is also the county facilities and the city hall. At the time I made some of those suggestions, there were members of this council that disagreed with me, basically saying that it wasn't fair to the taxpayers of Eugene to have them help pay for the services of the citizens of the county. That's pretty narrow-minded, in my opinion. We all live in this area. We take part in a regional type style of living. George, I appreciate you saying we need to work with the county. I'm glad somebody else is finally saying that on this council. I think that is a very important part that we need to do. And I'm just convinced that if we maybe start looking at combining into one facility, that we'll find a big cost savings for both us and the county, and I think it's worth that discussion. And hopefully we'll have that discussion come this week at the JEO meeting. I don't know where it'll go from there, but I think that's what we need to start doing.
Chris?
Thank you. I don't think we can operate without a seat of government. That's the 30,000-foot level. We have to have a seat of government. The question then becomes, what kind of seat of government should we have and can we afford? And I think that's been the source of the disappointment right now is we wanted a Tesla, but we can afford a Volkswagen, a diesel Volkswagen, maybe even less than that. Afford whatever is an inexpensive car, a Kia, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, I've only got enough money to afford a cheap car, and I want a Tesla. And you came to me with a Tesla, and I looked at a Tesla, and I was under the impression that I could get that Tesla for the same price. And I think that's where things became difficult. I was kind of moving on the assumption that, oh, well, you showed me a Tesla, so I think I can get a Tesla. And it's not necessarily that it's your fault. It's really kind of a sticker shock of realizing that my expectations were much higher than I could afford. I still need a car. I still need to be able to get around. And so whether I can car share, maybe that's one of the options we've talked about or whatever, might work. But for me, like George, I want to wait 3 days and have a conversation with the county. But I am very conscious of the fact that every single day that passes, the cost of building whatever is going to be higher. It's going to cost more. So I don't have time, I don't think we have time to reset and then take as long as we want because the price just keeps going up. And so I think we need to be careful and we need to be thoughtful and we need to look for opportunities. There may be opportunities out there, but we can't take forever to do it. And I think that for me is the biggest thing. I'm willing to have the conversation with the county and see where that goes. But I think after that conversation, we need to get back together again and act very deliberately. Because if we say, oh, well, I need a couple of months to think about that, the price keeps going up and the price keeps changing. And it doesn't do anybody any good to keep processing this into a totally unaffordable situation. I want to be thoughtful. I want to be careful. But I don't want to be wasteful. And you can be just as wasteful dragging your feet as you can making a bad choice. And I don't hear anybody on the council wanting to make a bad choice. But on the other hand, I don't want us to take too long to make the right choice. And for me, the right choice is getting some additional input. I can't afford that Tesla. As much as I'd like to have it, I don't think we can afford it at this point. So I want to see what the alternatives are. What are the other options for us? And I'm very open to that, but I need to do it quickly. It needs to still happen in a very quick and deliberate way.
I don't have anybody else in the queue right now except for Betty and then Alan.
And Mayor, can I be in the queue?
Yes, you may.
Oh, somebody else is there.
Okay.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay.
You're next, Claire.
Thank you. For one thing, I see the need for the minutes we've talked about. We have a overview of what's happened all the time, but we don't have who voted for what and when completely. We did vote 2 times to keep the city hall and at least to keep the council chamber, the parking, and as much of the rest of it as possible, and yet that didn't happen. Eventually, council majority voted to accept the proposal to build something on one corner, and the delay has caused the price to go up and up. I don't know why there was so much delay, and I'm sure that somebody will say there was a reason, but it's foolish to keep delaying if we're going to do it. I do think we need a city hall. I'm willing to talk to the county, but there are things that should have happened way before we demolished what we had. And it's too late for that now. I know it's, I would like, when we have records of what happened, I'd like to see who voted for what and when. And I think we need the details. I still think that City Hall should be where it was, but I think we need to clarify that we don't own the Butterfly lot and we don't own eWeb, and some people seem to think that we own both of those. They'll say, why don't you use eWeb? Well, it's being used, and the Butterfly lot is not ours. And the longer we delay, the more money it's going to cost, probably. I don't know what to do. I think it's a big mess right now, and I think most people think that. But I'm willing to talk to the county people on Wednesday. Thank you.
Claire?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions and then some comments. In the staff presentation, it was referred to the complexity of some aspects of the design. Can I get a little more specificity about what those complex aspects are being referred to?
Yes, we have Mike Penwell coming up to talk about that.
Hi, Councilor Surratt. Yes. Well, the high energy efficiency goals, the double skin facade to help with the welcoming and accessibility, and just the quality and the longevity and all of the things that go into making a 50-plus year building that we all wanted to see.
And would you think that the issue of, unlike a regular office building, this is a building that needs to be accessible to the public while also offering some measure of security, would that also be adding to the complexity?
I don't think so. I think there's ways to manage that without adding to cost.
Okay. And so with this 18+ million bid estimate, where does that put the estimate for the whole project as would be under option 1?
At about 28 million, just under 28 million.
Thank you. So just some comments. I'm definitely frustrated with where we've landed. Reflecting at least on my part and being part of this council, it's definitely been like herding cats to get us to agree as a council on an overarching vision for the new city hall. I feel like we've had very little consensus on many aspects of the project, so it's not totally surprising that we're facing some challenges. But at this point, I'm not really interested in revisiting our past decisions about the site and the basic outline of the building. I think they've been sound decisions. I agree with the comments of the mayor that having that civic center is very important, and the longer we delay, I think the more challenging it becomes to make that vision embraced by the rest of the community. I have to say I'm not as optimistic as some about the idea of collaborating with the county. While it might be a nice concept, I think the practical considerations will be significant, and it could take many years before we come to a mutual agreement and move forward on some kind of actual structure. I do think we need to find a way to get a handle on the increasing cost estimates. I think our original estimate of $15 million was trying to do something on the cheap, which doesn't reflect our community values. I wish I had some brilliant suggestions on how to proceed. I'm really feeling at a loss for good choices at this point. I am willing to talk to the county on Thursday, but I also see that costs are going to continue to rise if we delay too long. So I will, broadcast right now. I'm not going to have a lot of patience with considering a long delay in building our own city hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Chris said and what Claire said and the mayor said, that we need a seat of government, that we need a Eugene City Hall. I am willing to go with option 3 at this point and willing to delay our decision for a certain period of time until we have a conversation with Lane County. And I'm open to hearing new ideas and hoping that something will come out of that, but I'm also skeptical that will result in anything that will actually lower our costs. I see a lot of those ideas as increasing our costs. We can't just pick the design up that we have and plunk it down on the butterfly lot, which, as Betty pointed out, we don't even own, and expect the design to just be the same cost. It'll be a substantial increase in cost. I asked for an estimate of what it would cost to actually do that. Do you have any information on that?
There's a handout that went to everybody, I think, at the beginning of the meeting, yes. And it summarizes some of the costs associated with the butterfly lot. There's even just to sort of cut and paste the existing design over would require this first set of bullet points here, some new geotechnical analysis and survey, civil landscape irrigation, that sort of thing, probably flipping the building so that the public spaces stay toward the major thoroughfare from Pearl to Oak. But you're right, it's because it's a different site, it's very unlikely that we would just try to pick it up and move it. And so the next group of costs there indicate investment in the City Hall to date that are basically sunk costs that we wouldn't get back. Much of the design costs, I think, we've learned from and would carry forward, but obviously there would be new design costs moving forward. And these are just very high-level cost estimates, but just picking up and moving the existing design would probably be at least $500,000, but any kind of redesign and so on, depending on the amount of redesign, would be anywhere from $1 million to $2 million or even more if we started completely from scratch to respond to the unique aspects of the Butterfly Lot site. And that is based on the assumption that the site has been demoed and shoveled ready, similar to our site. A couple of considerations: the photovoltaics and path to net zero would no longer be possible because that's in the part of the grid that doesn't allow net metering back into the grid. You may be familiar with some of the safety mechanisms that eWeb has in the downtown grid. Over on our site, we are able to back meter because of the direction we're able to bring the power in from. The current building design would not meet the floor area ratio for that site. It would require some kind of council exemption, most likely, to build on that site. And obviously, depending on the design and how far it got moved back towards 7th and that sort of thing, Phase 2 could be impacted.
So a substantial increase in cost and probably forego net zero, and we'd have to and then think about rethink farmers market for sure, I think. And then, as we have seen, waiting is costly. If we had done this project and put it out a year ago, it would have been a completely different story, I would think. And waiting, of course, is likely to increase our cost. And waiting for the courthouse idea to actually mature, that could be a 5 to 10 year plan, if ever. Now, the courthouse is going to, at the size they're talking about, 250,000 square feet, is like a $80 to $100 million building. And they would get 50% match from the state, which means this county has to come up with $40 to $50 million. Where is the county going to come up with $40 to $50 million? If they do that, they have to put it out for a bond. And the likely of that succeeding in this environment, I'll kind of leave, I won't even answer that question. But the guaranteed maximum price means what? There's been mention that with change orders, the price is going to be more than $28 million. But what does guaranteed mean?
Well, actually, in the overall budget, we have a change order contingency built in, so that is covered. But the guaranteed maximum price is based on the construction documents that were prepared by the architects. The contractor is assuring that he can build it for that cost. No more than that cost. It's everything's tallied, so usually with a GMP, the cost is a bit less and something less, and the owner keeps the difference. But that's the maximum price based on the construction documents as is.
So as built, it's going to cost that amount. If it goes over that, the builder eats the cost.
Correct.
Okay. So change orders aren't likely unless we change something.
Correct, and there's always a few things, and that's why we keep it 2 to 2.5% change order contingency on any project. So
how much is in that for change orders?
That's, what does that add up to? Let me see what I've got there. About $500,000 reserved for change orders. Yeah,
that could not materialize as well.
Correct.
Okay, I think we've been on this path well over the 10 years I've been on the council. I remember going to things before I was on the council about the City Hall process. So we've been working on this a very long time, probably as long as Betty's been on the council. I think it's also important to keep in mind that except for this $3 million increase, all of the, because of the bidding environment, all of the increases are a direct result of what the council said that the staff should go do. Would that be the fourth floor, the energy efficiency, the better use of the fur coat on the interior, the increase in civic identity, 95% reuse and recycling of the demo material? I'm as frustrated as the next person about the cost increases that have occurred here and the pace that we've gone. But I think after the county meeting, I think we're going to be in a fish or cut bait mode. So I'm eager to move on.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Is that working there? As much as it pains me to quote Captain Metaphor over here to my right, I think that's the point here. He mentioned earlier the idea that we have a Tesla appetite. I think there's another of his metaphors that fits more appropriately here. You can have it fast, cheap, or right, and pick any two. I think that's the one that works here. I think over time that the staff and the project team and all the folks working on this have done a fantastic job of responding to the council. And it's the council who have driven this process. I think Alan's right. It's my opinion, we've been, with the values of what we're trying to accomplish, trying to shove a square peg into a round hole for an awfully long time. And I think that's the actual problem, that we need to revisit the value decisions that we made around how we instructed staff to come back to us. Now, I have absolutely no desire to have this drag on even longer. And I certainly don't want to put it off for a year. And I have a much better idea that I think fits the best values, but I'm in the minority. And so I guess I would look forward to talking with the folks from the county. I would remind people that what I read the mayor write in an email earlier is correct, that the Holt Center and the library and some of the other legacy projects in our community took frustratingly long amounts of time to do well. It's true. But I think when it comes to get it right, fast or cheap, we need to get it right. And we need to be as frugal as we can. So time is going to suffer a little here, as it has, until we get it right. But we should revisit the values around which we're driving and asking for costs. I think that's our first order of business after speaking with the county and learning more about what some of our other options are. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments, Mike. I would just aim for less than 40 years.
Me too.
There seems to be some history about that.
Me too.
I'd also say that I remember when I was first mayor and we were having discussions the first round about City Hall, that I had a lot of discussions with our county partners over here about a joint effort. And at that time, they couldn't see their way to doing it. And one of the reasons was they had documents that said the butterfly lot would have to be used in a certain way. Now there's been a new look at that, and they think it's more flexible for the use. But that was the end of the discussion at that time. I guess my other comment would be, if you think this is what we've got planned is a Tesla, it's a mighty small. Maybe it's a small Tesla, and I'll bring up one thing, and I know this leads into the discussion with the county, but I do think it's worth bringing up. If the council decides to move forward with the city hall, you still have 3/4 of the block that you have not done any real thought on. So that's 3/4 of a block that's along with this building and the butterfly lot that could be part of a broader discussion about municipal needs of all kinds. So those don't have to go together. They can go together, but you do have those options. Second round is George Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'll go back to where I finished off before I got cut off time. I think the current system's working pretty well. I like Harris Hall as a public meeting hall. I like coexisting in the public service building with the county. We're paying below market rate for our offices here. how many years, I have a question for the project manager, how many years are left on the city leases at the bank and the Woolworth building at Wells Fargo, and
5 or 6 years, I believe.
5 or 6 years?
Like that. I'd have to check to be sure, but it's somewhere around there.
Okay, so when those leases run out, we probably won't be ready to do phase 2, so we'll have to renew those leases. We could just continue to stay in this building. My point is, I'm hearing rush, come on, we got to do something. We got to do something. We've been talking about this since 2001, according to the city's timeline. Some people may think, if we go to, what is that sheet with the, oh, here we go, City Hall butterfly lot. Let's go down to investments in City Hall. $2 million demolition, $1 million master planning, geotech, so on, $500K. There's one investment that's not listed here, and that's $3.1 million to the architects. That's how much we've paid them so far. I don't know if anybody went over to City Hall to examine the cost estimates that I requested. There's a binder. It's about that thick. I don't know how many of you went over to look through that material. I made copies. So we can go, well, was this money just wasted? Absolutely. If we go for a major pause? No, it wasn't wasted. The $2 million demolition, that can be negotiated with the county in the land swap. That has to be taken into account. There's ways to do that. I mean, I've examined, pretty complex building and demolition things in other cities. There's ways to work that out. It just takes a little time to come to a fair trade there. Same thing with the butterfly lot. The $3.1 million to the architect, that's not wasted. We used that design. We just use it on the butterfly lot. I mean, this is an option. I'm just talking about options here. We just need to spend more time talking with the county, more than beyond this one meeting. I mean, in an hour and a half, do you think we're going to figure everything out? Of course we're not going to. It's going to take months to structure a fair deal. These things are not simple. It is complex, but that doesn't mean that it can be done. Things like this are done all the time around the country. It's, I think I'll need another round, Mayor. Thank you.
Chris, you want to queue?
Yes.
See you next.
Thank you. I'm really appreciative of the quality of the conversation we've been having. I think everybody is really trying to zero in on what are the important aspects of this very complicated discussion. And I really am kind of able to get something from what everybody says and say, yeah, I agree with that. That resonates. And it would be, I think, important to not go down the road of convincing ourselves that we can still have some sort of a cheap way out of this. I think whatever option we choose, wherever we go, whatever happens, it's not going to be cheap. And I think that's really something that we need to kind of confront early on is whether we do something with the county, whether we do something on our own, whether we move, whether we stay where we are, whatever it is we do, it's not going to be cheap. And so we kind of have to just accept that and say, what is the way that we will finance what it is that we really want to do? And so I think part of this conversation at whatever point needs to say, okay, we've got roughly 17 million. How do we come up with whatever that rest of that amount needs to be? How do we come up with that? And I think that's a very important conversation to have, because I think if we're going to have any reasonable conversation about where we're going to go, we need to really say, okay, I want this. How am I going to pay for it? I think is an important piece of the conversation. We've got some of the money. We're obviously going to need to raise more in whatever it is we try to do. Where's that money going to come from? And so, and I need to know that. So I'm back to the point. I haven't heard anybody say they're for option one this evening. I don't hear anybody saying they want to do something tonight, which is good. I think that's wise. I think option three, which is at least hearing what a potential conversation with the county might represent, is reasonable. It's only 3 days. But then I think we need to immediately sit back down and have a conversation after that and say, okay, what did we hear? What do we think that means? What are the implications? And then if possible say, and whatever that might cost, where might some potential sources to pay for that come from? That would be very helpful for me. But I think the important point is to say we're no longer in a $17 million price range here. I think the council has, as Alan pointed out, consistently said we want these kinds of things. And I've thought about the idea of scaling back the project, but I can't think of anything we could scale back that would be agreeable to the full council. So I think we're in a point where we say, okay, it's going to cost us more. How much more, I don't know, but we got to figure out how we're going to pay for it and where it's going to be and what it's going to look like and be thoughtful and deliberate about it. So I just want to make sure that, no, we're not going to scale back to something for $17 million. We got to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to pay for it.
Betty?
Let's have a bake sale.
That's a lot of cookies.
I want to disagree with the statement that it's council's fault that we've delayed. Once we voted to do what I don't think was the right thing in the first place, but that's beside the point, then it was left up to the architects, the city manager, and we heard nothing about it for many months. No one said, do you still want this, or do you want it to be this way? And in the meantime, I don't know what they were doing. They were doing something else, but that's when the price was going up, and that was not the fault of council, not even the fault of the councilors who wanted to tear down City Hall. It was out of our hands for a long time. As for what we do now, it's really difficult to decide, but this is not, I disagree that this is satisfactory. This is not our space. If we need to have a special meeting, we'd have to ask the county if we can use it. If someone wants to use City Hall, which used to happen now and then, for a meeting, we don't have a City Hall. And I think it's wrong not to have some kind of City Hall. I don't know where the money will come from. I don't think anyone's going to give us a lot of money. But I think further delay is not a good idea when we're told, because there was a delay, which I do not think we were responsible for as council, but because of that, the price has gone up. And I assume it will keep going up. Even the demolition was doubled, and I don't understand why we had to pay that, why they didn't lose, why the people doing the demolition weren't the ones to lose. If they said they could do it for $1 million and it cost $2 million, I don't understand that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got George Poling.
Thank you. Yeah, I just would like to agree with a lot of what Chris was saying about what he's looking for in the meeting with the Board of Commissioners on Thursday. One of the things that I'm looking for is I personally would like to hear exactly and directly from the Board of Commissioners and their appropriate staff any information they have on their cost estimates, their timelines, and it'd be nice to know if they still say that they're not interested in maybe sharing the same facility with us as a joint building, and if they have any ideas about that or any discussions about that. We may end up coming back here with no new ideas, but at least we can have that conversation in an open public meeting, so not only does everybody at this table and our staff know what the county is thinking and working toward, but the public knows. At this point, I really don't know. I don't know what their timelines are, or what their cost estimates are. I've got a rough idea based on what I'm reading in the newspaper, but I'd like to hear it directly from them, and I think that's a major reason why I'm looking forward to the meeting.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. I concur a lot with what George Brown and George Poling said. I think that we need to do what's in the best interest of the community. At the end of the day, what is going to be in the best interest of the community, what's in the best interest of the citizens, both cost-wise, price-wise, and what we're going to end up with for the next 50 to 100 years. And this is more than a building. This is about where we are as a community and how we create place and how we further develop this downtown down here. I'd like to see us have a real honest discussion with the Board of County Commissioners and see exactly where they are. I mean, even before I came on council, Mayor, I always thought, you know, why can't we all kind of get along and live together, you know? We're doing that kind of that way right now. I mean, we're bunking up. It's like moving back in with your parents, but you know, we're
Couch surfing.
Well, sort of couch surfing. But we owe it to the community to come out with the best product that we can possibly deliver. And if we can do that in collaboration with the county, and there's an opportunity to do that, then I'd like to explore that opportunity. But by the same token, I don't like diving off into, you know, a swimming pool with this much of water. And I kind of feel that way in this sense, and I want to agree with Councilor Taylor on this. I think that in a lot of respects, there were a lot of things that we, you know, were not privy to in terms of how we arrived at this place. And over the months that we, you know, have been, you know, kind of waiting for information about where we were with City Hall, how we're going to move forward with City Hall, we really did not get a full and clear picture. And so I'm not happy with where we are. When I came on this council back in 2013, my first vote was on moving forward with a $15 million project. Now we're at $28 million plus. I understand things change and costs go up, but that's a pretty dramatic increase. So I know my time is up, and I'm ready to make a motion here.
And then we'll let George Brown have one more round, and Alan, and then you put the motion on the table, okay? You asked for another round.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Well, you know, this thing has gotten out of control. You're talking about a budget, you, staff and manager, project manager. There's no budget here. There's nothing. We don't even know what budget we're talking about. What budget are we talking about? We've never seen. Council has never voted and approved any budget for City Hall other than adding the fourth shelled floor. So what budget are we talking about? We don't see any budget material. Why don't you have any documents that show the budget material?
You're correct. You have not approved any budget or authorized any spending. There's the $15 million which you have set forth. There was also the fourth floor piece which added some dollars. Beyond that, you haven't authorized any additional dollars to spend. For us, and what we talked about with the council last time is if you choose at some point to move forward with a specific project, for example, a guaranteed maximum price project now or sometime into the future, we would need to come back and get the council to actually authorize the budget to move forward with that. We don't have the authorization to actually move forward with a project at this point.
Thank you for that. This goes to the heart of the problem, what I'm talking about. The last budget I saw that you provided for us on April 27th was this one. It says current estimated budget, but we never approved that. There was no council vote to approve this budget or any other budget other than the budget adding the fourth floor. So, and we did things backwards. We put the cart before the horse. They went out for bids, but we didn't know what the budget was. As far as we knew, it was still $17.85 million. That's the last one that the council approved. And so you go out for bids, and do you understand how this is wrong? I mean, I don't know of any business entity that would do it this way. You know how much you have to spend. You know where that money is going to come from. That is called your budget. Council approves that budget. Then you go out for bids. You know, people have been talking about council values. I know two council values that have been sadly lacking in this whole process, and one is fiscal responsibility, and the second one is open and transparent government. Look, the cost consultant that the architects hired, Mr. Przolkowski in Portland, he's very good, I understand. He did 8 cost estimates along the way. We've never seen a single one. McKinsey Commercial did 5 cost estimates. We've never seen a single one. We haven't even developed a budget, a final budget for the project. It is so out of control and so out of hand, it just boggles my mind, and I can't understand why no financial information was brought to the meeting tonight. Because we keep talking about, oh, well, it's going to cost, $2 to $3 million more. More than what? What figure? We don't even know what figure we're talking about.
The way it has worked, we've actually done it both ways. The initial budget that the council had approved was $15+ million. And then you added on the 4th floor, there was actually a set budget, which from there, the attempt was to actually design a project within that budget, which is, I think, what you talked about, which was where I'll use your Tesla analogy, that what was embedded in the council values was the Tesla that the budget couldn't afford. And so that when we came back to you and said that we no longer can afford that Tesla for the budget, and what the council directed us to do was to bid the project that was designed, and then once you knew what that cost of that project would be, is to come back to the council, and if the council wanted to accept that and move forward, then you would authorize the budget at that point, which for the guarantee maximum price, what the contractor has said is, I can build that project for $18.2 million, so then you would have to authorize the additional dollars to get there.
All right, so you say that we authorized you to bid the project. I'm looking at the meetings, such as they are, of April 27th. There's no mention of that here. Council did not authorize bids to go forward because we haven't even seen the final construction document from the cost estimator. I need another round mirror.
I'm going to have Councilor Evans put it on the table.
I'll leave it.
Go ahead. Not yet. No. It's Alan's before. Yes,
all I was going to say, and I just disagree, that the council is very clear, and we were very clear that the next steps were to go bid the project and bring that back, is what we've done. And so I think that's what I'll end with.
Alan?
It's not in this document.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely clear that the council wanted you to go forward and bid the project. It's kind of mind-boggling that you would do that without the nodding of the heads of the council. So I thought that was absolutely clear. I wanted to clarify that what I said was all the things that were added to the project that cost the budget increases were added because the council directed it. I agree that the delay was not of all of our making. Some of it was, but not all of it, for sure. And the question I had, a comment that George Poling put forward is, do we have a list of questions that for the county meeting that we want to be answered? Have we generated a list?
We haven't generated a list, and so the way that the council joint meeting is currently set up is that there will be a brief presentation from both staffs, really just talking about currently where we are. The county staff's intent is to provide an overview from their perspective of different options, and then have some clarifying questions, and then general discussion between the elected bodies in which the mayor and the chair would, the Board of Commission would facilitate that conversation. And then at the end of that, if the body, either individual bodies or jointly, wants to provide some direction to their respective staffs or joint staff, you could have the opportunity to do that then, or post that particular meeting. So that's the agenda.
I always think it's helpful to go into those meetings with questions in mind, and we brought up several of them, and I encourage other councilors to put them forward. But so this Board of County Commissioners and the staff can think about responses in the interim before we meet on Thursday. But just as a starter, I think we should ask them how the butterfly lot land swap would work, what the timeline could be for it, whether the legal issues are resolved on that, whether or not they would hold us harmless on cost increases if we did a swap because of the increases in construction costs. What's the plan for the courthouse? What's the timeline? What's the budget for that? And how do they plan on financing it? Because I think that's a huge issue. And any other specific ideas they have about cost consolidation and cost savings that prompted this conversation, or the letter that they sent us. Anything more detail about that, I'd be really curious to hear from them.
Well, what we can do is take those. George, you had some questions. If there are any other questions that you would like us to pass on to the county and ask them to answer, be prepared to answer, we'd be happy to do that and give them that opportunity. So either verbally or send them to us via email, and we'd be happy to share that with the county.
I've got Greg and then Mike in the queue, and then we're going to put the motion on the table.
I have a couple of questions for staff, okay? One of the things that we still are fuzzy on is precisely where we're going to get all of the money to build phase one from. And I'd like to make sure that we've got some real clarity and certainty about what resources that we can dedicate to the project, where those resources are going to come from, if we're going to divert resources from other capital projects, what projects we would be deferring as a result of that. And then secondly, I think that we need to, people in the public need to understand that if we do proceed with this particular iteration of City Hall, that we also have a phase two, and that we need to understand that if we build phase one and then we build phase two, we need to understand what we're building in phase two, what we're going to get out of that, and how we're going to pay for it. So those are issues that I think that are still unclear. They need to have some clarity, and that focus needs to be sharpened. And that needs to be sharpened before we move full steam ahead on any kind of decision.
What we can provide for you is an updated a sheet on where the costs for phase one would be paid for. So we can update what we provided before. I think last time was in April. So we'd be happy to do that. With respect to phase two, the council really has had very little conversation about a phase two, either location, design, any of those questions. And so the cost of a phase two is the location of the phase two, and the scope of a phase two, I would say, has really not been discussed at this table. And so we wouldn't be able to provide that information back in time. Well, depending on when you chose to make a decision around phase one, would be whether or not, what information comes to you about phase two, I think.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I've read before we vote on this, and I will support number 3 if that's what you want to put on the table, because I think the conversation will be good with the county. But I think it's important for us to have a sense of what, as Alan mentioned, what questions we might ask, but also kind of framing of what we actually want to see as an outcome before we talk to them. And I think there are a couple of decisions on our part that are important before we speak with them, and Greg touched on one of them. For example, having spoken with most of the commissioners and having watched their meeting and having read a great deal of the outcome of their meeting on this, I know that, or I sense that, a majority of commissioners are not willing to do an agreement unless it involves the north part of that property, so that there's connectedness, correct?
What I would say, and we've been talking with the staff, not so much all of the commissioners, they have expressed that and the judge, talked with the judge, that the connectedness between the court, the DEA, and the sheriff, the proximity is important for that, for those, and connectedness does become important for them. So they have talked about that at the staff level.
Okay, so my point there being that with regard to phase 2, if we're going to build on that side over there, if we decide that side is the important place to put City Hall, then we must sell them either the north part and the east part, or there's no deal to make with the county. Because they're not willing to do it if they can't have the north part. And so then the question is, where's phase 2 go? So, the only other alternative is we swap them half a block for half a block and end up across the street over here at the Butterfly lot. And I don't know that there's a council majority for that. So I'm not exactly sure what it is we're going to be working out with the commissioners, but I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So I would just add to that, Mike, that I think as I've had conversations with them, that they not only want to talk about what you talked about, but there are future possibilities for this building and for the Butterfly lot. So if in the course of a conversation, as I said earlier, aside from the location of City Hall, if you look at 3/4 of the block and this building and the Butterfly lot, and we all think about that together, there's all kinds of ways that could work out. Yeah. Okay.
Ready, Mayor?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. I move to postpone direction until after the council meets with the County Board of Commissioners in a joint work session July 14th. The council could hold a work session on July 18th, either before or at a 7:30 meeting, during which the council can choose one of the above options or a different one. If the council chooses this option, then unless the council directs otherwise, our intention would be to provide notice for a public hearing on July 25th on a supplemental budget in order to preserve council's option for accepting the GMP following the joint meeting. Guaranteed maximum price.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Poling, and then Mike.
Just if the maker of the motion would accept a friendly where it says the council could hold, change it to the council will hold a meeting on July 14th.
I'm fine with that.
And then also, would you accept council choose one of the above options or a different one, and to review our project values and redesign the project to meet those values?
I accept that friendly as well.
Thank you.
Your second, accept that?
Sure.
Okay.
I think it's just kind of...
Could you repeat that, please? That amendment to the motion?
Yeah, it was where it says during which council could choose one of the above options or a different one, and to review our project values and redesign the project to meet those values. And that would mean if we change some of the project values, then we have to discuss the how we're going to change the design.
Yep.
So you're taking kind of this, a part of this option 2 and just bringing that down, essentially where it
Correct.
says review
Very
their
last
project
sentence in
values.
option
And
two, yes.
All of that on the 18th? Or when do you want to have that?
It would start the discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to complete it all on the 18th. Obviously, we can't do that on other topics, so I didn't anticipate us doing it all in one day.
Part of it.
Good.
So I've got Mike and then George Brown.
Thank you. My challenge is the idea that we're going to continue forward with the hearing on the 25th. Now, I don't mind having a hearing on preserving our option to expend money on moving forward, but I do have a problem with the dollar amount, because I could never be a yes on the $28 million. So I don't know how I support the way you read that we're going to plan to have a hearing, that unless I'm misunderstanding this.
It's a placeholder.
It's a place.
By notice of a hearing that
By
you hold.
notice, we can pull that if we need to.
Right. In order for you
We don't
to
move forward, we pull it.
right, in order for you to preserve option 1, which is to be able to adopt a supplemental budget on July 25th, we need to give notice now,
So it's
as in
just
tomorrow.
notice. All right. I will say this then. I'll vote in favor of it, but as long as it's clear to the manager that the only reason I'm voting in favor of it is the first part. While it's always good to preserve an option, there's no way I would ever be in favor of using it in this particular case and for that amount. Thank you.
George Brown?
I'm going to make a substitute motion, which I will speak to if I get a second. I move to to do option number 2, rebid the project in 6 to 9 months when the bidding environment might produce more competitive bids.
Second? No second. Okay, so now we're ready to vote on the motion on the table. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Claire?
I vote yes.
There's because there's only one in opposition, so it should be 7 in favor and 1 in opposition. Yes.
For the work session on the 18th, we will schedule that. Currently, you have a 7:30 meeting scheduled, I think a public hearing. We could, if you're okay, make this work session at 5:30. Sure. If people are available for that, as opposed to tacking it onto the 7:30. So we're open for either way, and maybe, Mayor, we can talk about how to schedule that, and people can weigh in if that makes a difference for people.
Be on the phone if we do that.
Okay. Yeah.
Or sometime in between there, we could
Betty,
start
you
at
have a
6:30
comment
or
about
something
that?
too. So.
I was going to object to the 5:30 meeting, but I'm apparently the only one.
It doesn't matter to us. So.
Does it matter to you if I object or not?
No, to whether it's 5:30, whether it's 5:30, 6:30, 7, 7:30, so
I
we
would
can
say
do
the
it.
advantage to a 5:30, and I don't know what that does to what you've already got planned. So I'm just saying the advantage to that, as opposed to having a longer discussion late in the evening, is you're fresher for the discussion, and you're able to. It'll be easier for the deliberation process will be easier.
Fresh discussions are always better.
Yes. All right. With that, we are going
You want to do the consent calendar?
Sure.
You can if.
You want to put the consent calendar on?
Yeah.
Want me to put it right in front of here?
So,
I want to pull something.
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved in second, and Betty has one she wants pulled.
I want to pull the last one. I didn't know we were doing that.
Okay.
Item F. Okay.
Number F, authorization of the e-commerce.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion with the exception of F. All those in favor, please indicate. And Claire?
I vote yes.
Okay, so 8 in favor and none in opposition. And then we'll, you want to take up the,
I want to vote against the e-commerce, which would mean that we could conceivably give a tax exemption to a call center, for example.
okay, so now help me with this, Glenn. Is it the F is on the table, or do we need to put a motion on the table?
Now, F is on the table, which you could take up now. And just a reminder to the council, this is the same resolution that you previously adopted, but the state has informed us that you need to adopt it after July 1.
Okay.
And I previously voted against it.
All right. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, and Claire?
I vote yes.
7 in favor and 1 in opposition. It passes. Thank you. And then we'll take up the meeting at 7:30. Thank you.